The words slipped from her lips like a quiet surrender, but they hit the table like a shattered glass. She stared down at her untouched coffee and forced a smile that didn't belong to her. No one wants to date me. In that crowded little restaurant filled with clinking plates and soft music, her confession felt louder than anything else in the room. At the table across from her sat a single father who hadn't been on a date in 5 years, and 3 little girls who were secretly watching everything from behind a decorative plant, holding their breath as if the world might break if they exhaled too loudly. Before we step further into this story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small hearts to change big lives, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that love often shows up when we least expect it. Her name was Ilara, and she had almost canceled the blind date 3 times that afternoon. She had stood in front of her mirror, examining the faint scar near her eyebrow from a childhood accident, the softness around her waist she never managed to lose, and the tiredness in her eyes that came from years of pretending she was unbothered by rejection. At 32, she had learned how to laugh at herself before others could. She called herself the practice date, the woman men met before finding someone better. She told friends she was independent and content, but the truth was lonelier than she ever admitted. Across town, Daniel was trying to convince his triplet daughters that hiding inside a restaurant to spy on their father was not appropriate behavior. They were 8 years old and fiercely protective of him. Since their mother passed away from an unexpected illness 5 years earlier, they had watched their father transform into both parents overnight. They had seen him burn pancakes at midnight, cry quietly in the laundry room, and smile bravely at school recitals while holding back tears. To them, he was a superhero in worn-out sneakers. When Daniel's sister insisted he finally try a blind date, the girls reacted with suspicion. They feared losing him to someone new. They feared being replaced. But they also feared something else they didn't fully understand, that their father might always be alone. So they made a secret pact. They would observe this mysterious woman and decide whether she deserved him. Ilara arrived at the restaurant early, clutching her purse like a shield. She had chosen a simple blue dress, elegant but safe. The hostess seated her near the window, where the fading sunlight painted the table in gold. She watched couples laugh around her, feeling like an outsider peering into a world that refused to let her in. Daniel arrived a few minutes later, nervous but polite, wearing a blazer he hadn't worn since a cousin's wedding. He carried the weight of responsibility in his posture, but there was warmth in his eyes. When he greeted Ilara, he did so gently, as if she were something fragile he didn't want to mishandle. Their first few minutes were awkward, the kind filled with safe questions and careful smiles. Ilara noticed the faint dark circles under his eyes and the way he checked his phone discreetly. She assumed he was bored already. She assumed she was failing again. Meanwhile, behind a large potted plant, 3 identical heads peeked out in perfect synchronization. The girls whispered observations to each other. They noted Ilara's nervous smile and the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she spoke. They noticed how she listened more than she talked. They noticed something their father seemed to miss in his nervousness, that her eyes held a sadness similar to his. Halfway through the meal, Ilara's guarded composure began to crack. Daniel had mentioned his daughters, and something in her expression shifted. She confessed she had always wanted a family, but that relationships never seemed to last long enough to build one. She explained how men often described her as too serious or not exciting enough. She laughed lightly as she said it, but her fingers trembled around her cup. And then, almost as if she were tired of pretending, she whispered that no one ever really wanted to date her for long. Daniel felt something twist inside his chest. He recognized that tone. It was the sound of someone who had rehearsed rejection so many times that it felt like truth. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, but he feared sounding insincere. After all, they had just met. What authority did he have to contradict her life experience? Behind the plant, 3 hearts broke at once. The girls didn't fully understand adult insecurities, but they understood sadness. They understood the feeling of thinking you weren't chosen. After their mother died, they had overheard relatives whisper about how unlucky they were. They had seen classmates avoid conversations about moms during school events. They knew what it meant to feel different. The date ended politely but uncertainly. Daniel walked Ilara to her car, thanking her for the evening. She drove away convinced she had once again confirmed someone's low expectations. Daniel returned inside to find his daughters waiting with expressions far too serious for children their age. That night, the girls held a meeting in their shared bedroom. They analyzed every detail like tiny detectives. They concluded that Ilara didn't look at their father with pity or discomfort. She looked at him like she understood him. And most importantly, she had looked at the empty chair beside him, the space where their mother would have sat not with jealousy, but with quiet respect. The next morning, the triplets did something bold. Without telling Daniel, they found the small card with Ilara's number that had been tucked into his jacket pocket. They didn't intend to cause trouble. They intended to fix something. When Ilara received a message that afternoon, she assumed it was spam. But when she opened it, she found a simple, heartfelt note written in uneven handwriting. The girls introduced themselves as Daniel's daughters. They apologized for spying and admitted they had overheard her words at the restaurant. They told her she was wrong. They said anyone who listened the way she did, who smiled even when nervous, and who respected their dad's story, was someone worth choosing. Ilara read the message 3 times before tears blurred the screen. No adult had ever defended her like that. No one had challenged her belief so directly yet so gently. She felt seen in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Daniel discovered the message that evening when Ilara called, her voice trembling but hopeful. He was mortified at first, apologizing repeatedly for his daughter's interference. But as Ilara described what the message meant to her, he realized his daughters had done something he hadn't had the courage to do. They had spoken truth without fear. What followed was not an instant fairy tale. There were doubts and awkward moments. There were second and third dates where Daniel worried about moving too fast, and Ilara feared becoming attached to a family that might not fully accept her. The girls, however, made their intentions clear. They invited her to their school play. They insisted she try their favorite pancake recipe on a Saturday morning. They asked her about her childhood, her dreams, her favorite colors. Ilara struggled with the growing warmth in her chest. She had spent so many years preparing for rejection that acceptance felt suspicious. She waited for something to go wrong. She expected Daniel to pull away, but instead, he showed up consistently. He texted good morning. He asked about her stressful workdays. He listened when she admitted she still felt unworthy. One evening, months later, they sat together in Daniel's living room while the girls built a blanket fort nearby. Ilara watched as the 3 of them argued playfully about which movie to watch. She felt a familiar ache, the fear of wanting something too much. Daniel noticed her quietness and gently took her hand. He didn't promise forever. He didn't offer dramatic declarations. He simply said he was grateful she walked into that restaurant. The true turning point came unexpectedly. At a school event celebrating families, the triplets were asked to draw pictures of their household. Most children included parents and siblings. When the girls presented theirs, Ilara saw herself sketched beside Daniel and the 3 small figures. Above her head, they had written, "She chose us." Ilara felt the old belief crumble. She had always thought she was the one not chosen. Yet here were 3 children claiming she had made the choice that mattered. In that moment, she realized love was not about being universally desired. It was about being deeply wanted by the right people. Years of insecurity did not vanish overnight, but they began to loosen their grip. She allowed herself to imagine a future without bracing for abandonment. She allowed herself to believe that her softness was not a flaw but a strength. Daniel proposed quietly one evening in the same restaurant where they had first met. There were no grand gestures, only sincerity. The triplets watched openly this time, not hiding behind plants, but cheering without restraint. Ilara said yes not because she feared loneliness, but because she finally understood she was worthy of partnership. If this story has touched your heart so far, please pause for a moment and comment below with the word chosen. Let us know where you're watching from and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people who may feel invisible tonight. On their wedding day, Ilara stood before a small gathering of friends and family. She looked at Daniel, at the 3 girls holding bouquets too large for their hands, and at the empty chair left in memory of the woman who came before her. She felt no competition with the past. She felt gratitude for the journey that led her here. When the ceremony ended, one of the triplets hugged her tightly and whispered that she had been wrong that first night. Someone did want to date her. Someone wanted to build a life with her. Three someones had decided it long before she believed it herself. And as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in warm shades of promise, Ilara realized that sometimes the people who prove us wrong are not the ones we expect. Sometimes they are small, brave souls hiding behind plants, listening carefully, and daring to rewrite the story we tell ourselves. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that you are worthy of love even when you doubt it, please like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories. Your support keeps these messages of hope alive, because somewhere tonight, someone is whispering the same words Ilara once did. And maybe, just maybe, a few brave hearts are already preparing to prove them wrong.